Before we get into the craziness that is this episode, I thought I'd share a Sean story. I remember one time him and I went for a drive. He was driving an old Volkswagen Beetle. And we were driving around town, and he was going to come see my new house I was renting, big house in a decent neighborhood. And I was excited because I hadn't lived in a place that big before and wanted to show it to him. And we hadn't seen each other for a while. Now he had 2 kids. So we drive through Burger King. I remember because that was the one drive-through. It was close to where I lived. And then just as we got to my house, a cop pulls us over. In Mexico City, if you have your license plates end in a certain date or number, since there's so many cars on the street, they make you take a day off. So it was the day he wasn't supposed to be driving. And I'll never forget, in his broken Spanish, I mean, who knows what he's saying half the time, but he always communicates and he's always so charming. He starts talking to the cop. And he says, no comprendo. And then he says, mi esposa, my wife, works for the mayor. And then he pulls out of the glove compartment a copy of his wife's ID and a copy of the ID of the man who is now president of Mexico, who was then the mayor of Mexico City. And he starts talking to the cop with this confident tone. Even though the cop barely understood what he's saying, he's pointing at the mayor's ID, talking about how his wife works with him and how he'd love to invite the cop to lunch so he could tell him more about the rules he doesn't understand that he's breaking. And even who I feel like I spoke, I wasn't perfectly fluent then, but I spoke more than he did. I could understand him even though he wasn't making any sense, just like the cop could. But what he was really saying to the cop was, you can't mess with me. I'm bulletproof. Look at this ID. And it was just a photocopy of an ID, but why the heck would he have it? And, he'd always say things like, oh, my wife works for the mayor. He's going to be president one day. And, you just never know because all the stories are so wild. Are they all true? Are none of them true? Is he full of it? So eventually the cop just said, oh, he even offered him our Burger King. That's why I mentioned it before. But eventually the cop just said, I understand you're not from here. I don't need your lunch, and just kind of let us go. And Sean just left his car parked there until the next day. We were right in front of my house anyway. But just another story about how the Gringo Loco, could just charm his pants out of the pants off anybody and get himself out of any situation. So this is just a fun memory I had of him. But what we're about to hear is something else. It's wild and crazy. So I'm just going to spoil it. But it's an incredible story. Our Gringo Loco claims to have invented crack cocaine in this episode. Oh, well, being a 16, 17-year-old high school kid and everything else. So this entry has guns, drugs, the invention of a new type of drug, coming back from the brink of death, parties, the mob, all kinds of stuff. So the Gringo Loco strikes again, and just listening to him talk about it too, the way he kind of describes being in San Francisco and how you get his personality traits come out. The little things that age him a bit, but also tell you how cool he was. It's just lots of fun. So enjoy the ride. It gets wild on this one.
The 1970s turning into 80s. Good times, different times from today. That's for sure. If you allow me to continue my story, and you are patient enough to continue listening, I'm sure that it will only get more interesting as we continue and turn out to be the best true story in your life if not mine. From our last part of the story, the mafia, cartel, gangs, rock and roll, let me continue. We left off on Monday, so let me continue with Tuesday. Going to school like so many times before, I saw Dean walking, so I picked him up. He said he more or less knew when I left the house, and that's when he did the same. He would synchronize his time with mine, hoping to get a ride. That's what we did together, as we would later be the better part of our lives together, watching each other's back and doing a lot of business together, and this biggest adventures ever together. Arriving in the parking lot at Los Gatos High School, 16, 17 years old, what a life to be young. It only happens once in a lifetime and goes by so fast. Justin was there next to us in his Mercedes, waiting. He said he had some more new clients. Dean said the same. I said that I was ready whenever they were. My man, the man, he's always got green and white as long as you got the money. All was agreed upon between us that we would meet up after school was over. Before you knew it, 3 o'clock was there, and so were we. They told me how much was needed in all. So I said, let me go see Johnny, and I'll meet you at JT's house. Give me about 2 hours. I'll see you at 5 o'clock. I went to see Johnny right away, not only because of the substantial amount of stuff my friends wanted, but friends or no friends, Johnny was my boss. This was my job, life, call it what you want to. But work is work and should be taken seriously. 3:30 arriving sharp, on time and ready to go, only to be the best bodyguard chauffeur ever. I knocked on the door. He opened it up with his brother, as Johnny had a gun in one hand and his brother lifting weights in the back room, yet visible. He told me to sit down, take it easy, and relax, that he would be ready shortly, yelling at me that we had a busy day ahead of us, lots of deliveries to be made. I told him, when are we not doing it? He told me that business was good. I told him the same for me. I need more shit. He told me after we take care of my business that he would take care of me later. I noticed the packages and envelopes were getting bigger, and so was the client list. Never-ending drop-offs with so many people in so many places. I would love to describe each. That's a story in itself. But to continue with mine, the day had ended with Johnny driving with a gun. Yeah, anyway, I had to get home to see my mom and eat dinner, do homework, and also, before doing that, I had to see my friends and make my drop-offs. Arriving home on time, it was my turn to make dinner for the family. I had decided to make spaghetti in red sauce with hamburger, garlic, onion, salt, pepper, Maggi, Worcester sauce, a little bit of Mom's leftover red wine. Also include French bread, salad, and Jell-O for dessert. While cooking, I also clean the house. First with a broom. After sweeping, I would then mop. After that, shake the carpets outside. Return them in their proper place. Then, with a wet towel, clean all the furniture. Wipe it down. Good. Then, make the beds. Return from that, continue cooking, set the table, make the salad, cutting up the lettuce, tomatoes, green peppers, onions. Today was my famous salad dressing oil. Vinegar, salt, pepper, oregano, garlic, mandarin, tamarindo juice, sugar, just a touch, so you can taste the sweet and sour together. I call it my Italian Chinese salad dressing. After serving the food on the plates, filling the glasses with fresh orange juice that, of course, I made by hand, as I did everything. My system was to then wash all the pots and pans. First, it's less mess to clean up for later. It was only after dinner that I would clear the table, clean it, then take all the dirty dishes off the table to the kitchen and wash them. This was a way of life, the way it was just finishing. We were all somehow gathered around the table, eating as a family. Family is very important, whether it be at home, of course, or no matter where you are. But for me, my second family, and number one of importance, was the Italian family, the mafia, which I had the fortune, or later one might see it as misfortune, depending on your point of view. It could go either way. It was time to go to bed and start another day, tomorrow, as every other kid does, right? Wednesday morning, time to do it all over again. It was pre-planned that I bring a bunch of material to school to supply the needy. Everybody needs something. I saw them as I parked my car in the lot. Seeing each other in the morning was always a pleasure, a great way to start the day, as far as a kid goes. I gave them their package. They handed me my envelope, talked a little bit, and all went our separate ways, off to class. Before I knew it, the week flew by, and it was Friday night. I found myself, as always, working for Johnny. Like every day, we had to make deliveries. He told me tomorrow night Justin had a party, and all the clients would be there. So no work, only pleasure. Saturday night. Getting home Saturday morning, I told my mom that I'd be with Justin, that he was having a party, probably be home late. She was used to me and my lifestyle, not really knowing what I was doing. As long as I did my homework, cleaned the house, got good grades, and stay out of trouble, she was okay with it. The phone rang at that moment, and it was Dean. He wanted to come over and then go help set up the party for later that evening. I asked my mom if it was okay, and she said it was fine. When Dean arrived, my mom had already taken off to work. She did this 7 days a week. God bless her. Dean and I went to my friend's house around the corner. He was handicapped in a wheelchair, Vietnam veteran. He was the father of my other friend. His dad was so cool. I used to put him on the sofa so I could practice doing wheelies. I would balance myself on the chair. It wasn't easy, but he taught me how to do it. He also had a GTO 69. Beautiful car. We would all get stoned together and hang out. It was a cool house. Today, not so much time. We had to go to Justin's. We thanked them for the hospitality and took off, taking my 1955 Chevy that I parked in front of my friend's house, always. He kept an eye on it and didn't tell the secret to my mom, like so many others. It went both ways. Today, I let Dean drive. He loved to. Who wouldn't? It's not often that one gets to drive a 1955 Chevy. It was fast. We got to JT's mansion very quickly. It was a small town. He had everything ready. The servants had done the work for him. He wanted us to get there early just to start partying. Let me tell you something. For a sophisticated rich kid, this guy loved to party. It was later that night, in his wine cellar, in the mansion, below in the basement. It was below the garage. It was hidden, a secret air-conditioned, huge room. It had to be cold 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because of the hundreds of bottles of wine and champagne that his dad, famous lawyer, always kept this place stocked for his clients. It was the perfect place to party. Never broke a sweat. When we would party anywhere else, that's just what we did, along with everyone else. We partied hard, and sweating was just the way it was. I hung out with all kinds of people, rich and poor. Also junkies. They use needles, older crowd. But young and old, we all hung out together. The common denominator was the party. It was the one thing we all had in common. I remember cooking up some shit for a friend in a spoon. Heroin. He had taught me how to be the best chef. My dad, a doctor, I was afraid of needles, so I never went that way. Also talking about growing up in San Francisco, I was strictly a ladies' man. I never played for the other team, either. Not that there's anything wrong with that, to be politically correct. While cooking, I dropped some water on my friend's pile of blow. He was so mad. I had cut it earlier with baking soda because I ran out of my normal stuff. I always whacked the fuck out of my Coke because it was just too good. And I doubled my money this way. Shake and bake. I fill half the Ziploc bag with white, the other with baby laxative. It was clean and would dissolve in your fingers, just like the stuff. It looked almost the same after you shook it up. I cut it like most people, went so up the ladder. It was too pure. People could hurt themselves with this stuff. I felt like I was doing them a favor. Everyone used to do so much at one time and continue 24/7. No wonder people were overdosing. I always did a little bit of product. I preferred the green. You can never do enough of that. Anyway, I finished cooking up the heroin for one friend and told the other, because I spilled water on his 8-ball, that's 3.5 grams, that I would cook his up so it would not be wasted. He told me that he wanted to snort it. My other friend, he would pay for it and shoot it up. I cut it with baking soda, Arm & Hammer. I had never cut coke with this before, let alone cook this way. As I was cooking, it looked different, almost like an oil that was in a circle floating above the boiling water in the big spoon. I put cold water on it and it turned into a rock. Everyone was tripping out on this as they watched me perform magic. I turned the coke with baking soda by cooking it, then making it cold into a hard rock, something that nobody had ever seen before. I took it out of the spoon, then dried it on a napkin. It fell onto the table and made a clunk sound. My friends, like, I can't shoot that shit up. And my other said, let's try to snort it. The shit wouldn't dissolve. It was no longer water soluble. What the fuck was this shit? What did I do? What did I make? Today this stuff is called crack. At the time of my great discovery, we didn't know what I had just made. It was our only option to try smoking the shit, right? So that's what we did. We put it in the pot pipe, lit it up, and smoked it. We were like, holy shit, this stuff rocks. And that we called it Rocks, later to be adopted with the name crack, because of the sound when you smoked it. We smoked just a little bit, and it got you so high. The high was different from anything anyone had ever done before. Like so many accidents in life, mistakes can turn into something of beauty. Look at penicillin. Invented by accident, just like my little invention. Crazy, right? How the fuck did I do it? Something so small that became so big. It was a big hit, no pun intended. It started with my friend and then the world. Imagine me, the creator of what is now the world's biggest problem and downfall. Let me tell you, Justin wouldn't stop smoking the shit. He blew out his hit after about 20 of them and started to turn blue and purple. He looked like a dying fish out of water, flapping on the floor. The circle of people around him started freaking out. Everyone was yelling and screaming, saying, somebody do something. Call for an ambulance. I told them the police would come if you do that. Give me a chance to save him. I know CPR. My dad's a doctor, and so am I to some extent. I pushed on his chest, also giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, along with the CPR. That was the closest I ever been to being gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, to be politically correct. Anyway, it's the first time my lips had ever touched another man's before. I'm just saying, time passed very quickly. Everyone waiting to see if I could save Justin's life. After all, he was the host of the party. The owner of the mansion also my best friend. The least I could do was save his life, and that's just what I did, as he threw up and came to, swinging his arms, hitting me in the face. I had saved his life. Everyone applauded like I was some kind of rock star or something. I guess I was, in more ways than one, a big rock star. I had just invented how to change a water-soluble substance into a rock, something that everyone used to snort now could smoke. Not to take anything away from saving a life, that was a miracle in itself. Half the party had taken off during the few minutes that he was dying, paranoid that the cops would show up. The other half giving me congratulations for what I had just done. Johnny was impressed with me, how calm and cool I was, but more impressed with the new product, rock, that I just invented. He said to give him a sample and that it was time to go. The party was over. Everyone went their separate ways. It was time to go home. I got home and my mom was still up waiting for me. Like most mothers, they worry about their kids. She was used to me coming home late, but still didn't like it. She took my lifestyle pretty good, accepting it under the best conditions. We made a late night snack together and drank some tea that she had just prepared, said our good nights, and went to bed. Sunday morning, I was woken up by a phone call. It was Johnny. He told me to come over ASAP, as soon as possible. As my boss, I could only do that. I'll be honest, I didn't want to work. It was Sunday, my day off, and I was still tired and a little hungover from the night before. Arriving at Johnny's, he had the sample in his hand from the previous evening. He asked me, "How the fuck did you make this shit?" I told him to put Coke plus 30% baking soda, mix it up, then cook it. At the point of boiling, throw some cold water on it, and the hot gel turns into a rock. Also, you could check the purity of the Coke by doing this. For example, if you cook a gram and when it comes back, throw it on the scale, weigh it. For example, if it's 0.8 of a gram after cooking a gram, the blow is 80% pure. It's 2 for 1, he told me. That I was fucking brilliant. I told him, tell me something that I don't already know. He told me that we would have a long drive ahead of us, that we had to go to San Francisco to see the big boss, the meat man, ex-boss, as you remember, the head of the mafia. Upon arriving in San Francisco with the meat man, the bread man was also there. They wanted a presentation of the new material called rock. Also, how I made it. They told me that Pablo Escobar, the supplier from Colombia, and Chapo from Mexico were interested in this new product that was made from theirs. Word travels fast in this business. The newly found sensation was to flood the market ASAP. People would eat this shit up like candy, as we used to refer to the white material known as Coke. The meeting was short but sweet. We found ourselves taking Highway 101 to the Freeway 280, back to Los Gatos. No drop-offs today. It was enough. Monday, back to school. Same routine, if you know what I mean. This continued as usual. A week flew by, and before I knew it, I was back at Johnny's Sunday, watching football. It was Chargers, 7-0, undefeated, against the Broncos, 0-7. They haven't won a game all year. Johnny asked me if I wanted to make a bet. He would take the Broncos, who hadn't won a game yet that year, and I would take the other, who hadn't lost a game. He said the bet was for his BMW. If I won, I would drive it home. If I lost, I had to pay him $10,000. I took the bet. How could I lose? I lost the bet. Now I owed my boss $10,000. He told me I could work it off. Yay! So I get to risk my life for nothing, like everything I do in life is for nothing. Now I had to work for free. This sucks. This is life. It's not a sugar donut, all sweet and fluffy. The year was coming to an end, so fast, like everything. I don't know where the time goes. My mom had some news for me, that we were going to move to Palo Alto, California. That next year would be at Palo Alto High School. She had received a new job there, as well as a new real estate agency, Coldwell Banker. I told my friends about the move. Johnny took the news pretty bad. He said that he would miss me. I gave him the list of clients and told him that Justin would continue the business. All of us kept in touch. Dean more than anyone else. Los Gatos to Palo Alto isn't very far, but at the same time, it's a lifetime away from each other. Once again, a clean, fresh, new start in a new place. The mafia giving me their blessing again to stray away from the business. But of course, always keeping in touch, like all families do. We lived in front of the high school, and across the street was Stanford University. I would go to both. I, of course, started in Palo Alto High School during my junior year and finished my senior as well. Starting my first day of school at 17 years old, I felt different. It was the first time in such a long time that I was out of the business. No worries, no hurries. I only had the problems of a normal 17-year-old. And that was enough. Along with having to move once again. It's a lot of work, not to mention all the other stuff I had been doing. Palo Alto is so beautiful, unlike anywhere else in the world. I quickly made some new friends. Randy Dela Cruz, a ladies' man, with a van that was covered wall to wall with red velvet. On the outside was a Confederate flag, painted on each side, always listening to ZZ Top. Corey was a geeky, not so good-looking guy, with a Mustang. Also, the hottest girl in school. I don't know how he got her. Nobody does. More power to him, and people like him. Anything can happen to anyone. Paul, he was a jock. School was great, and so were my grades. This school was one of the most difficult in California. The standards were high, being right across from Stanford University, one of the best colleges in the world. People here were very well educated. This was actually the original Silicon Valley. A lot of people don't know that. Palo Alto, California is where Apple, Hewlett-Packard, HP, Sun, Ford Aerospace Many high-tech companies all started in Palo Alto. It was later, because of the increase in real estate market, especially in Palo Alto, very expensive, that Silicon Valley later got started in San Jose and Santa Clara. In the 1980s, this was the cheapest place to live, half the price of Palo Alto. For this reason, everyone from Palo Alto moved to San Jose and Santa Clara. It was a good investment for all the high-tech companies to do so. For that reason, it's called Silicon Valley. I got a job with Bill Gates in Palo Alto as a copy boy. He called me his photostatic engineer. I was only a part-time worker, obviously, because of going to school. Bill supported students. He's a good man. I had a full schedule. Life was good, and so was I, staying out of trouble. I also worked with Coldwell Banker, a real estate company, along with my mom, selling houses. I would clean them up, paint them, do the gardening. My mom was the best real estate broker. She sold lots of houses. Her mentality was to have me do magic and make it look beautiful inside and out before selling it. Then after the person buys it, they would always want changes. My mom, being a good sales lady, would recommend to the buyer to change the kitchens, bathrooms, gardens, yards, etc. She had me, plus all the other contacts, to do the work. The best price with her, always, making a profit. Coldwell Banker had a meeting once a month. I asked my mom if I can go with her to present my new company, gardening and painting, to all the other real estate agents. It was a success. In 5 minutes, I had made 20 clients, always keeping me busy. Not so much me, because I hired 10 workers with 5 trucks to work for me. It was gold. My employees did all the work, and I made most of the money. I was an entrepreneur, had my own legal business. It was a good cover, front if you will, to explain all the money I had from my other illegal business.
So how about that? He invented crack. And, lips on another man's lips. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just to save a life. Very good. Thanks for clarifying. But what I can't get out of my head is the meticulousness. I mean, when he describes dinner, all the steps, the dressing, the cleaning, the preparation, how meticulous he is in the way he describes it. And then it sounds exactly the same when he starts describing the invention of crack and everything that he's going through, the steps he's taking, what he's seeing. And I don't know if that's a sign of something, because we see Sean, in this story, this world he's created, and in the life, in real life that I know him, he's kind of a bit wild, a bit of stoner, and he drives crazy, but then he seems like a procrastinator or a little lazy, but then he has these moments of this high attention and attention to detail. So it's really neat. I never thought of it like that before, but when I think about the Sean I knew and the way he describes himself in the story, I can feel a connection. So of course it's him, it's his voice, but just a neat little thing to notice. And some things like that are popping up that are interesting to follow along with. All right, I hope you enjoyed this one. Can't wait to share more with you next week. Thanks for listening to True Story, a podcast by Gringo Loco. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page at Sean Balin Gringo Loco Podcast and follow us on Instagram at Gringo Loco Pod. Catch our next episode 1 week from today.